Boundary role segmentation model describes a structural condition in which a role remains coherent inside its own boundary, while the larger system becomes contradictory. The central distinction is simple. Local role coherence is not system coherence. A person, office, reviewer, interface, agent, or subsystem may act correctly within a bounded responsibility segment. The rule may apply, the authority may be valid, the action may be procedurally correct. But across the larger system, that same action may create contradiction, delay, exclusion, friction, or incoherence. The role does not necessarily experience this contradiction. The boundary defines the logic. A role boundary decides what can be seen, decided, treated as evidence, treated as risk, refused, escalated, or ignored. Inside the role, the action makes sense. Across roles, the system may fail. This is not simply bureaucracy, bad faith, hypocrisy, ignorance, or poor communication. The model asks what boundary made the contradiction invisible from inside the role. A system distributes responsibility, a role boundary forms, local logic stabilizes, a contradiction appears across segments. The contradiction remains outside the active role frame, the role preserves its boundary. Interface friction accumulates, the system fails at the macro level while each role remains locally defensible. This produces segment-limited coherence. Segment-limited coherence means the role is coherent only inside its assigned segment. The role sees its rule, risk, permissible action, and prohibited action. What lies outside the boundary appears as context, not contradiction. This also produces contradiction immunity. Contradiction immunity means conflicting conditions are not processed as contradictory because they belong to different boundary contexts. One role requires a document, another role controls the document, a third role decides eligibility. Each role may be locally correct. The user experiences contradiction. The system can still say that each step followed procedure. No single role feels contradictory. The contradiction is distributed across boundaries. When uncertainty appears, the role protects its boundary. It may say that this is outside scope. Another office must decide. The system does not allow this, or policy requires another path. These statements may be true. The structural issue is that boundary preservation replaces system integration. The model is relevant to review chains, platform governance, human-in-the-loop procedures, AI-mediated systems, agentic tool systems, institutions, and multi-role organizations. In human-in-the-loop AI systems, a reviewer may carry accountability without visibility into generation, retrieval, tool use, or upstream assumptions. In agentic systems, planners, retrievers, executors, validators, and approvers may each perform a local role correctly, while the whole action chain becomes incoherent. The model is paired with boundary integration failure, but it is not the same model. Boundary role segmentation describes failure through over-separation. Boundary integration failure describes failure through over-fusion. One fails because roles become sealed micrologics. The other fails because boundaries dissolve and roles collapse into one plane. A functional system requires distinction with permeability. Too much separation prevents contradiction from crossing boundaries. Too much fusion destroys distinctions needed for stable action. Boundary role segmentation should not be applied to every role division, workflow, hierarchy, or specialization. The model applies when boundaries produce local coherence while preventing cross-segment contradiction from entering responsibility space. The analytic question is whether the role boundary allowed the system-level contradiction to become visible, owned, and actionable. Naming declaration. The boundary role segmentation model originates within meta-writing ecology as a structural model for describing local coherence, contradiction immunity, and macro-level coherence failure in role-bound systems. Here, boundary means the structural limit that defines what a role can see, decide, interpret, own, refuse, escalate, or ignore. Role does not mean only a human job title. It may refer to an office, interface, agent, subsystem, review layer, approval function, or policy category. Segmentation means division of coherence into bounded zones. It does not mean ordinary specialization or hierarchy. Contradiction immunity means structural non-registration of inconsistency across boundary contexts. It does not mean denial, bad faith, or irrationality. This model is not derived from sociology, organizational behavior, role theory, bureaucratic theory, systems engineering, human-computer interaction, AI governance, or political science. Those fields may intersect with it, but they do not define its bloodline.